welcome to TriEssence martial art channel. Today we're going to debunk Ramsey's debunk of Mizner's documentary. Okay, that's quite a mouthful. So what basically happened is, a while back, this happened last year, Mizner and some other people released a fake documentary, voiced by Morgan Freeman about the power of Qi, and he hires some, strongman, some UFC champion to basically pretend to legitimize his Qi power as something that is real. And then Ramsey, I think he's like a MMA coach in Shanghai, right? He's a foreigner, but he lives in Shanghai. And then he's basically made a video to debunk Mizner's Qi documentary. So while I commend Ramsey's intention to expose fraud and fake Chinese martial arts, I have to say that his method of debunk is questionable and problematic. Right? So even though he has probably the good intention, he doesn't actually understand how these performances are done. So as a result, his method of debunking it, or his explanation to this performance, is inaccurate. And the problem to that is then the supporters, the Mizner supporters, are going to basically look at this and illegitimize it and say, you don't even doing the same thing. Therefore, you are not debunking what's happening in the fake documentary. And even the bystander are going to look at that and they're going to be misinformed on how those performances are actually done. So even though he's trying to combat misinformation, he himself is still contributing to the problem. Which is why, even though I am in line with him, on the same side of the argument, I do have to make a video just to clarify a few things that he got wrong. So in his video, he basically debunks three things. That's the three things we're going to talk about today. And the first thing, we're going to first watch a video of Mizner's demo, and then we're going to watch how Ramsey debunk or explain how it's done, and then we're going to talk about it.
Very slowly it comes back to him. Push.
Whoa, the Qi is drawing fast. All right. So when I tell him be very strong, what he's doing is pushing his hands inward, almost like he's trying to clap. But he can't because I've got the inside position, which is stronger. Right, so he's squeezing, and when I say push, now push me, he can't push me in this position. It's ergonomically impossible. It's impossible. All he's able to do is apply inward pressure this way and not forward pressure. But when he gives me that pressure, he essentially starts squeezing as he attempts to push. This gives me a nice handle. So with minimal effort, I'm able to shove him across the room like it's magic.
Alright, so out of the three things that he's debunking, this is the one that he gets the closest to the actual thing, right? The other two is a little more off, but this one he actually got it quite clear. So the first thing that he did get right, credit where credit's due, is that when someone's hand is on the outside, then yes, the person on the inside's got a superior position in terms of pushing forward. Obviously, this changes if I'm doing a push hand and my hand is here, because then I'm actually pushing in like this. But if I'm not allowed to change to this position or to pushing downward, or here I'm also in this superior position, but if I'm only allowed to push forward, then outside is not as efficient as inward. Okay? Mainly because when I'm pushing from the outside, I'm basically applying force to this part of his arm, where he's driving this force closer to my center mass. So I'm more affected by his push than mine, which is actually going toward his back. And also, I have to constantly try to not let his force slip through. So I have to apply inward force and not just the forward force. Whereas all he has to do is apply forward force, and I'm actually helping him to keep my hands attached to him. He doesn't have to worry about that. He doesn't have to push outwards to seek for my contact. He can simply just aim for the inside, but I have to push in and forward just to be able to push forward. If I just push forward like this, I'm going to slip through, and then he's going to be able to hit me. So the person on the outside has more to worry about the person on the inside. So Ramsey is right that the inside is a superior position. But what he got wrong is that in that demo, Mizner is actually demonstrating a legitimate structural ability. Right? He's not actually propelling a guy with his arm force. So what Ramsey was doing with his students is that he let the guy push in, like push inward, and he's like, I'm gonna push inwards like this, right? And he's gonna bounce the guy off like that. Sure, it does work and does push the first person back, but the problem is that it's using your arm strength. That's not what Mizner is doing. Obviously, in the grand scheme of things, if you can move a guy backward, you move a guy backwards. But when you're debunking a demo, you have to be more technical than that. You have to be accurate to what actually happens in the demo. And in that case, he got it wrong. Right? That when Mizner repelled the person back, it's not by his arm.
Very slowly it comes back to him. Push.
Instead, the person is pushing himself back. Now, how does that work? Well, if you push against the wall really hard, you end up pushing yourself back, right? If you don't know that or don't believe that, you pause the video, go try it on the wall, until you see that if you push the wall hard enough, it pushes yourself back. Why is that? Well, Newton explained this to us 100 years ago. When there's a force, the opposite reaction, or an action, there's a reaction. So when I'm pushing someone, I'm also pushing myself. So if that person is immovable compared to the force I'm applying, then what actually happens, I'm actually just pushing myself back. That's what happens with the wall. Wall isn't going to move, therefore you push yourself back. Now, typically when a person pushes against a person, whoever is stronger is going to push the other person back. But in this case, obviously, the catch is that the person pushing Mizner is heavier, which is why it led to this whole idea that he's got some chi power, some magical chi power, allowing him to overcome a stronger foe. Well, he does have some quality, but it's certainly not chi power, it's just a better structure. Firstly, what you need to notice is that the student that's pushing him is in the inferior position. And I don't mean just the in-out position, but his hands were like this. So he's actually pushing like this.
Very slowly it comes back to him.
Okay. Once he does that, what happens is that his shoulder and his elbow is in a bad position. If any of you do done internal martial art, you know that the elbow needs to sink down, and the back needs to round, and the shoulder needs to sink. So this is the ideal structure. But that person is doing this, and he's actually almost a little bit back like this. So in that kind of setup, he's in the inferior structural skeletal position. That already makes it weaker, okay? He's not pushing in the correct way. I'm not sure if that's how he was instructed to push, or maybe that is just the way he pushes, but it is bad. And that makes the other person resisting it a lot easier. And secondly, when you are actively pushing someone, so if you just pretend to be like this, right, and hold the structure, if I'm actively pushing someone, then I'm actually trying to push this part, okay? But other person, if he's just trying to use the whole structure to receive the force, he's actually not engaging here. And that's why no matter how I'm pushing, he's absorbing with his rest of the body. So this part actually requires training. You can't just imitate this and do it. So that's why I say this demo is actually partially legit, okay? So if he's pushing, so I'm pretending to be Mizner. So if I'm push hard, right? So if I'm resisting with my hand, push, then we both unstable, okay? But keep pushing. But if I try to absorb the rest of the body, see, then I'm much more stable, right? Compared to this. This is when we're both using arms, and this is when I'm relaxing it. So once I'm here, you see, that's what happens, that's why he bounces back. Because the two forces are locked, and then, but that person is actually pushing, but Mizner is receiving it through the rest of the body, not by the arm. And therefore, he can still stretch the arm and stretch the system of his structure to apply further force. But the other guy has already maximized his force. He's already at 100%. Okay, it's like he's pushing against a wall with everything already. But Mizner has basically, rolled that force to the rest of the body. So I'm not just fighting here, but I'm using my legs and everything else to absorb that force. And here's actually quite loose, which is why I can still stress this, and that's what pushes him back. Because there's another extra amount of force that's adding to what is seemingly an equilibrium of opposing force. And the extra force tips the scale, which causes that person to push himself back. Right? Which is why in the video, as you can see, so if I'm pretending to be that other guy, so yeah, hold it like this, right? Fingers out. So I'm pushing. Right? So draw more to your legs and then extend your fingers and arm. And then what happens is then he's basically doing this. The reason he does that is because he's already pushing with everything. He's maxed out. He's not holding anything back. And then when there's more force coming in, then he's going to just end up pushing himself back. That's pretty much like what happens when you push against the wall. So like I say, this is a legit demonstration of structure, okay? But the problem with Mizner is that he is overselling it as some kind of cheap power. That's certainly not correct. It's just a structure. Another thing that he doesn't really explain to people is that there are limitations to it, right? He, although doesn't say explicitly, he infers that this is some kind of cheap power. It's like magical in a sense, and is that how he can able to overcome a stronger foe, a heavier foe with less strength. And what that implies to people is that then that means once you have this natural cheap power, you can easily defeat somebody that's stronger and heavier than you. But that's actually not true, because all that if you have any engagement with someone, you overpower them with natural cheap power. But that's actually not true, because while this is efficient in a linear, hit-butting kind of situation, this type of force has a very severe weakness, right? So if I'm pushing like this and he knows I'm pushing like this, he can apply it. But the moment I start doing up and down, left and right, it doesn't work. He has to know the direction that he's resisting to align his body to resist that force in that specific direction. And sure, if I suddenly change one direction, he can catch up. But if constantly shift between 4 different directions, no one is going to be able to catch up to that. It's just not possible. Which is why in the actual context, like even in Lehrman fighting, let's just say push hand context, where we are allowed to do this, then you don't see a situation where he just holds his hand and people just bounces back. Maybe with his student, but certainly not with people who are good at push hand and are actually actively trying to push him off balance. Which is why in push hand you often see people doing this more softly. The reason they don't come up with that strategy right away is because it doesn't work. People can just simply left, right, up and down and then destabilize you and then push you. So that's why people have to kind of do this in a soft way to find the opportunity. Then why do people want to train this type of structure, right? In push hand is for when you catch somebody on the verge of pushing you, if you can catch that moment and know the direction he's applying the force, if you resume that structure, you can catch him off guard and he'll be pulling himself back. But even that is more of a niche thing that only works with people who does push hand. The real implication or application for the structure, at least in my lineage, is just simply test your structure, which will help you in a punch. We're not trying in a fight to have somebody push us, right, and then repel them. That's not what we want to do. We don't even want to have that. Okay, obviously, if somebody really for some stupid reason come to you in a fight and do this, yes, you can use this and push him back. But we're not expecting that. What we're expecting people to do is to throw punches at us. And in that scenario, what does this do? Quite simply is that if I have this kind of structure, I'm able to draw the force into my body and then repel somebody back, then it set up the foundation to throw a punch where my whole body is behind the punch. And I'm able to punch someone from my feet all the way up my spine into my foot. So this is actually a way to test the structure so that you can hit somebody with some type of power is based on a fully connected structure. That's the only reason why we care about this structure. It's not for any other reason. It's just to maximize punches or strikes. And occasionally, if somebody do good lob with you, you know how to handle it. But that is actually not what we are banking on. To summarize, the first demo, Mizner is doing a legitimate skill or mechanic. He's overselling it as cheap power. He doesn't tell people about the limitation. Whereas Ramsey, he got part of the understanding, but he only understands as an arm resistance. He doesn't train Tai Chi, obviously why he doesn't understand how it is absorbed into the body and how the structure is what repels the person, not the arm. Okay, now let's look at the next debunk.
It's the transformation of the inner power.
And push. And I'll push as hard as I can. Pushing with his left hand exactly like this. The medium-sized guy in the middle, had one knee bent slightly toward Brian Shaw and a straight leg toward the small Tai Chi lady on the side. Small Tai Chi lady is pushing with her power hand in an athletic position, feet apart so she can use hip drive against the tricep, the leverage point on the body. Brian Shaw is pushing on the shoulder, acting as a frame and nothing more. So let's replicate the trick. Ready? And push.
Well, so in this one, Ramsey got it pretty wrong. I would say almost completely wrong. Right? And here's the reason. So he assumes, firstly, that the knees has something to do with it, right? So he's not completely wrong on this side. So obviously, if the two person is pushing the guy in the middle, and if his knees is bending this way, then obviously the person pushing this way is going to have an easier time. Because when he's pushing me this, no, he's just pushing the shoulder. If he's pushing this way, and the guy's pushing this way, then obviously he had to compete against a straight leg support. That person is competing with a bent leg support. So obviously I'm more resilient to a directional push this side than directional push this side, right? So that he's not wrong on that. However, I'm pretty sure that is not the pre-setup, right? I'm pretty sure the person in the middle didn't start off standing like this, because if they did, everyone would tell that something is rigged. Because this is not a fair comparison. So I'm pretty sure that the person started off standing in the middle, which is why the phenomenon on the leg should not be counted for. Okay? The reason why in the video you see the person leg turning this way
It's the transformation of the inner power.
because the person on the other side is already winning. So if you're standing like this, and the person on this side pushing you over this way, naturally your leg will bend. That's what happened to the leg. It's not a pre-setup. So that's the first thing you have to realize. The next thing, Ramsey assumes that the elbow is the key. So if Eric is the guy in the middle, unfortunately I don't have a third person. Assuming that this guy is in the middle, he assumed that because the person is pushing by the elbow, that's why he's able to control that person and win the push of war. However, and he even talked about how the elbow is so important because it's like a main joint, and how in wrestling you do arm drag with it, so you can control somebody's weight. But that actually, sure, yes, elbow is important and you can arm drag and whatnot, but that's not what happening here. A person can actually take his arm away, I can push him on the rib, and I'll still have the same result. So he's actually missing the trick of this demo completely. The real trick to the demo is quite simple. A person pushing closer to the center mass would always win. That's pretty much it, right? If you remember, a while back I made a video on how to fake a grandmaster, right? Which is a criticism on the Chen Xiaowang demo. If you haven't seen that one, you don't remember, you can go watch that one. It's quite interesting as well, where I talk about how he can resist 20 people pushing him on the stomach. This is pretty much the same thing, okay? But just like changing a little bit. So to better illustrate this, we are gonna use an equivalent just to represent the third person. Okay, so I do apologize, we don't have a third person, unfortunately. We're gonna use this. We can actually just like put it together and stuff. It doesn't have to stand, we can hold it. Okay. So assuming this is the third person in the middle, right? And I'm the little girl on the one side, is the weaker person, he's like the strong man on the other side. So he's pushing around shoulder level of the person in the middle. This was my mobile one. Okay. Yeah. And I'm pushing by the rib or the elbow level, right? So what happens when we push? Push. You see how this thing is not tilting, okay? That's because I'm holding the center. I'm holding close to the center mass. He's not. So that way he's gonna tilt the object this way, while I'm gonna hold its center mass in place. So in this case, it's much harder for him to overcome. Because he's applying force off where it matters. Right? I mean, how do you explain this in physics?
Basically, the two forces are not aligned.
It's not aligned, yes.
So therefore, you're creating a torque. So the ladder starts spinning at the center of mass, as the center, and basically it's dissipating the force because of the torque.
Yeah, so he's actually not pushing into my force, and I'm holding where it matters. He's not. He's pushing somewhere that is not really that relevant. Of course, with the ladder, if he's really strong, what happens is it's going to tilt this way, and then the end is going to slip, and the ladder is going to fall, and he's probably still going to win. But the problem is they're pushing a real person. The person is not going to trip. So as he's pushing the person that way, I'm pushing the person this way, the person is going to have to readjust. And because I'm pushing his center of weight, so his readjustment to his own balance is going to be in my favor. Which is why at that very moment, not just me pushing that person on that side, the person in the middle is actually helping me without realizing it. Because he doesn't want to trip and fall like a dead ladder. So he will constantly, he doesn't want to do this, so he will basically, that's why you see as the person pushing on the elbow, that his legs start to bend. That's a readjustment of his center mass, so he can remain in balance. And in doing so, he's basically favoring the little girl versus the guy that is stronger on the other side, which is why in that particular demo, it's actually two person pushing against one person. And the person pushing at a very bad position, which is how the whole thing works, okay? If they're both pushing on the same place, then that little girl will not be able to overcome that stronger person. And this basically also demonstrates one of the oldest tricks in the Tai Chi push hand book, right? In like not a combat oriented, but just like a pushing, shoving oriented Tai Chi push hand, where we're just trying to push each other off balance. Then every time we push, like if he's trying to push me straight, I'm always trying to go lower and push him back. Right? If he's pushing me, I'm pushing him together, whoever's strong is gonna win. But if you look at all the skillful people who pushes, they're always gonna do this, and they're gonna do that, and then we're gonna push and then go unbalance the guy. So what happened there is basically the same principle. He's pushing straight, but I'm actually going a little lower so that I go underneath his support and then try to uproot him. So that way in Tai Chi pushing or shoving, whoever is lower has the advantage. Or the same for wrestling, I would say, right? Whoever get the lower position is easy to uproot the person. So that's pretty much what's happening here, because the little girl is pushing lower, so he's got a better claim to the affecting the guy's center mass than the person that's pushing on the shoulder, which is actually not doing much, because all you're doing is just moving the upper torso. He's not actually effectively affecting the actual balance. So in this one, it's a complete trick. It requires no chi, just the correct positioning and understanding how this physics trick works. And Ramsey pretty much completely missed this. Again, probably he doesn't really know much about physics, mechanics, and obviously not these Tai Chi tricks. Not his fault, but I just think, you know, that maybe he shouldn't be so hasty in debunking Tai Chi stuff if he doesn't actually know how it's done. Okay, now moving on to the third trick.
I just touch. Yeah. Okay. Strong.
There's just too many people out there that are buying into this foolish
This
shit.
is stunning. Just using one finger on top of each fist to generate this force.
And again, focus on my one fingers. Again, get very strong. Very strong. Oh. Ooh, check that out. I pushed him across the room with my two fingers.
Alright, so this is probably the most problematic out of them all, right? I mean, the second one, Ramsey got it wrong, but at least he kind of replicated the demo correctly. He just didn't understand what's actually allowing the smaller person to win the push. But in this one, he's got it completely wrong, because what happened is, so the guy's holding a fist, and then like this, right? So he's putting his finger here, and he's doing all kind of weird stuff, and then pushing the guy out, okay? But that's not what Mizner was doing. And that kind of, it takes away any credibility of his debunk of this particular trick. Because they're not even doing the same thing. Sure, the result is that he moved the guy, but at the Mizner approach, pretty much just push the guy like this and the guy moved. But you know, he's actually doing all kind of weird stuff and then shove the guy out. That's not the same thing. So what actually happened, right? So one thing that Ramsey did get right is that it's not about the fingers. So that part is correct, right? This whole thing is very misleading. Is that, you know, I'm pulling somebody with my fingers. I mean, unless you pull somebody with your fingers like this, okay? Otherwise, you're actually pulling somebody with the surface of the finger plus the contact point here. So I'm actually contacting him with this whole thing. It's not like this, okay? So very different push. This is finger. This is not really finger. I have like a lot of other surface of contact. And the second thing, he asked the other person to be tense. So if the person is actually not tense, like if the person is semi-relaxed, this is not going to work either. Okay, he has to be very tense. And thirdly, the person isn't allowed to push into him. So it's not a situation where the guy is getting ready. The moment I contact him, he's pushing into me. That's not what happened. The person is instructed to just remain there and try to not be moved. Neither was he told which direction elements are going to be pushing. So you're completely blind on what's going to happen next. So that's a very important prerequisite. If the person knows what's going to happen and is allowed to preemptively push back, this trick would not work. Okay? So under the assumption that the person is completely stuffed out, like his whole body is stuffed out, and he's not allowed to actively push me, then what happens is when Mr. contacts his finger, then he's actually pushing him that way. So if you look at the video slowly, you can see that.
Yeah. Okay. Strong.
It's just too many people out there that are.
It wasn't a directly linear push, it's a push to that side. And also, he kind of asked the guy to stand in this kind of way, which makes pushing him that way a lot easier, because in a stance like this, going back and forth, he's got good balance. But he doesn't. But the way the leg goes, he doesn't have good balance that way. Okay. So he asks to be stiff, which makes it a perfect medium to apply the force, and then he pretends to push this way, but then he immediately moves that way. In which case, it's very hard for that person to resist, unless he knew this is going to happen and he preemptively push against, so he pushes this way. Otherwise, it's very hard for anyone to resist that. And that's how this trick is done. Obviously, he does it a lot more prettier than what I'm doing here. He's got more practice with his students. I'm just doing this for the first time. But the trick is the same thing. If you watch closely, the person is pushed to the side that is not where his leg is supporting. So yes, this does exploit a legitimate mechanic, right? If I'm trying to push somebody that's standing in a forward and back stance, obviously I want to push him that way. It's easier than pushing him backwards. But again, the selling point of his demo is wrong. He's trying to show that he's got some magical chi power that allows his finger to push an MMA UFC champion, few steps back. So that whole pretense and what he's selling is wrong, right? What he's exploiting is sort of legit, even though I would say there is not any practical applications for showing off how you can push something with your finger. It's not going to work. If you try to do that in a fight, I'm going to grab your finger and yank and break your fingers. So there's no practical purpose to it, but the idea behind putting somebody where there is not standing support is legit, okay? But this whole selling point, what he pretends to sell, whether he explicitly says so or he just, implicitly, hints at it, is a very bad practice of advertising. And I studied advertising back in my college days, so I know how they do these implicit hints so that they don't get into legal issues. Obviously, I'm not even saying he's scared of legal issues, but that's what they do so that they don't come on and tell you, my finger is so strong and push somebody off. But he does it in such a way that it's implied and everybody kind of gets it. But if anybody tries to accuse him, he will say, I never say that. And that's a very slippery thing to do. But either way, that's how that finger gets moved. It's not because of some magical chi power, and it's not because of anything else. It's just that he's putting somebody off center, and the circle of contact is more than the finger. Anything you want to add to this one?
Yeah, I don't think you need Tai Chi for that.
No, you don't. It is.
You don't need internal power. It's just body structure.
What
biodynamics. Basically.
If you just look at this trick, you can probably replicate it with your friend.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, you need more practice to make it look cooler, and hopefully, if the other guy is more compliant, he will step back more. Also, that whole demo apparently was done on a slope.
Is stunning. Just using one finger on top.
Downwards, so the guy would fall further. So you can accentuate the result, but the core method of how it works is basically just that. It's nothing fancy, and you don't need years of training. You can learn it instantly. And yeah, but unfortunately, Ramsey kind of got this wrong. He thinks it's some kind of yanking back and forth and then push, but that's not what happens. So which is why I believe that even though debunking fake stuff is important, but you kind of have to ask yourself, do you actually understand what's been done? If you don't, then maybe it's not that great to just jump straight away and try to debunk it, because what you do is actually just add to the already pretty convoluted pool of misinformation. Okay? Anyways, I hope you found this video interesting. And if you do, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. And if you want to subscribe to my Patreon support channel, I'll be muchly appreciated. I have a lot of exclusive videos on internal martial art, fundamental forces, and how to apply skeletal structure, how to train them. Well, not specifically training, but how they apply in Yiquan and in Wuxing Tongbei. So if you do want to have a more scientific understanding on how internal martial art and its mechanic works, please consider subscribing to my Patreon channel. It'd be muchly appreciated. As always, a big shout out to all my Patreon supporters. Thank you guys so much for your support. And I do apologize for the lack of content in recent days. My college study is actually quite hectic. And also recently there's a lot of power failure. I mean, last year I had a 3-day power failure because 5 high voltage pylons fell for some obscure reason. So yeah, so this country is not looking very good. We have like another total of 5-day power failure in the past 2 weeks. And after that I have to catch up my homework and assignment and write tests and study. So videos are pretty slow at the moment, but definitely if the power stuff gets stabilized, and yeah, I'll be basically trying to make videos every week again. Again, thanks for watching this video, thanks for watching TriEssence martial art channel, and I'll see you next time.